Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Gnosis. Well, we're going to cover one of the most important areas here, and this will be in my new course, which will be coming out very soon here. I'm hoping by the end of September, even though I've been saying that for 3 months now, but it is pretty much done. But the physical filming and so many other things for the final course, the third course on manifesting machines, radionics in general, which really covers a vast amount of different machines, is being quite involved. And one of the things I'm going to be having as part of that course is my pendulum course, which is very, very important and critical to everything that you do in basically force energy physics. One of the biggest problems, of course, what everybody demands, and of course, you got to remember that, I spent 55 years of research. I'm the #1 expert in force energy physics, often called subtle energy physics, radionics, etc., on the planet, in the universe. No one else knows what I do, and no one else has any conception of what the energy is, what to do, how to use it, how to build everything. So what you've been using for years, and one of the problems why things have never gotten anywhere, is because of the horrible bozos that produce this stuff. People that you got to contact for their price so they can give you the highest they can to rip you off for a box of pseudo garbage. Or you can contact the gym teacher, the high school gym teacher who runs the Psychotronic Association. Yeah, I'm busy right now smelling gym shorts, but let me know later. So all those kind of stooges that are out there is a real serious problem. They have absolutely no idea what they're doing, and they're basing everything they have on pretty much what is 100-year-old technologies. And certainly they're very interesting. And of course, we can go back to ancient times if we really want to understand the reality of subtle energy or force energy physics or informational energetic fields that create the universe. And as I said, I lay all this out in my course. But as we go through all of this stuff, the one thing you need to know, which I keep stressing to everybody, is first of all, you got to understand what this energy is. What is it? What is it not? And that's a good way to help find out what the answer is. What is it not? Because that eliminates then a whole bunch of stuff. And what's left is probably what it is. But you also have to have a high degree of intelligence, understanding, and high spiritual thinking, not religious, spiritual understanding of the universe and what goes on to figure this out. And the one beauty about the practice of manifesting machines, radionics, is that it develops your spiritual understanding. That's what's so wonderful about it, and why I believe that, quote, radionics or manifesting machines are the key to everything in life. It's the key to your ascension. It's the key to you understanding what's going on in the universe, breaking away from the, quote, matrix. And all the things that go with that. So it's really the answer to everything, but not just having the garbage that's out there with the hundreds of idiots that have no idea what they're doing on any level whatsoever. And people follow these people. They send them thousands of dollars, and of course, they get nothing from it. The whole problem is the human race, but that's another story. But alternative people, I'm beginning to think that alternative people are more effed up than the general population. At least you can understand the idiocy of the comic book religion people. And do they really have any choice? Daddy did it, I do it. I'm from Georgia. So the whole idea is that we have all these things that we have to understand of what's going on out there. So you have to understand what the energy is if you're going to build some sort of machine to draw and accumulate, amplify, etc. No one understands it except myself. Okay, not only that, what is the other phase of that? Well, the other phase of that is being able to understand the energies of how to measure them, how to test them, how to understand what's going on. And this is not that difficult either. Once you understand it, everybody wants a meter, but like everything else in life, I don't trust any meters. Are those meters really good? Does anybody really calibrate meters? Do we know if they're working right? Well, they do this with some things, and they try and calibrate things, anything from blood sugar monitors to everything else. But how correct are they? I mean, ultimately, with blood sugar, they say that none of these meters mean much of anything unless you get a blood test that tells you what your average blood sugar is over a month or 2 or 3 month period, that these daily readings are almost worthless. What are you averaging? And there's a great truth to that in some ways and in other ways not. You want to track something. Can't you get a ballpark? Yes, but let's remember it's a ballpark. If you want to know what your average blood sugar reading is, you need to have a test, a blood test, that does a much better reading than a little monitor and expensive strips. But again, they're measuring devices and they help. But does anything else really tell you exact information? Ohms meters, radiation meters. I mean, I'm not sure how good this tech is, but when I look at all the other tech around me, I have to scratch my head and say, is it working at all? So the whole idea is I don't buy any of it. What I do understand is a person who is connected to a high empowerment realm, the Gnostic or Gnosis realm of fact and wisdom, unadulterated, and this is the big key to get the answers that you need. So the big key is to become unadulterated. That means you have to take yourself out of the equation. Very, very difficult. People influence everything. And we get out of this influence by using shifting tools, psychic shifting tools. So you get your mind off of the common and the problems into a neutral spot. We do this with centering. If you're going to make good decisions, you have to be centered, meaning, again, you have to be kind of up there looking down at what's going on with the ants, meaning yourself and your civilization. So you no longer are part of that civilization. You are now the observer. Now, this is not as difficult as it appears, but you're taught to be a slave and a weakling. So you're taught to do what you're an ankle grabber like everybody else out there. That's why, of course, our so-called, I'm not sure what the percentage is, a percentage of federal law enforcement and everything else. Well, they go to the Mormons because Mormons are ankle grabbers. They do whatever they're told. They live in a fantasy world, and that's the way it goes. So the point is that almost everybody in society is an ankle grabber. That's the reality of life. Nobody stands up for anything or does anything. And if you want to prove that, just stand up for something and find how fast the room clears. So you'll find out all those tough guys, them corrupt Texans and Georgians. Yeah, you'll find out how they run. Yeah. So the little cowards they are. They want to join the military so they can murder with a group of other ones. Yeah, huh, Keith? Remember you, Keith? Yeah, you little Texan boy. I was in the military for 8 years and rose to be a private. Yeah, Keith Whitington. So the whole idea is we have all these kind of things out there that people rise to their height of cowardness, really. But this is important because nobody goes against anything. And then you get into an institution, a mental institution called a College Institute of Moron Institute of Technology, Cal State Morons, California Tech, all these people that are at the lowest possible level, but they think they're really smart because they get A's babbling back the incorrect garbage that that these teachers taught them. Yes, you're a completely programmed moron. Let's give him a cookie. So we have to understand all these things, and this is the bigger picture that everybody has to get into. So you want to be able to measure things. And as I said, I'm not sure that electric meters or meters in general, and what you have to do when you're not using electromagnetic based systems, does everybody get that? Because the bottom line, as I've been stating here for many weeks or months, maybe it's been a year or so, as I finally pushed away, kind of like bad religion, it's kind of hard to get the sticky crap off your hands. You got to keep washing it and using special stuff. Finally, you get the yoke of the filth of religion off of you. And you then move into other realities, which is the truth reality. So the electromagnetic spectrum is hard to get rid of because that's all we measure, because we measure it with an electromagnetic meter. It's made out of electromagnetism. It's run by electromagnetism. So you measure like with like. And of course, we somehow think that's good because, after all, as humans, we're idiots. We only built the pyramids and all the other stuff that went on there, particularly the ancient societies that were able to do just about everything that our modern scientists and engineering type, me can't make something that big. How do you cut this down? How could they do it? Yeah, well, because they were connected to Gnosis. You're connected to MIT. Moron Institute Technology. Let's give us a... Oh, yeah, it's electromagnetic. If it ain't in the electromagnetic, it doesn't exist. I'm MIT. So the whole idea is that we all have to understand that, and this is a very, very important understanding of what's going on in this reality and how we're going to figure out non-electromagnetic energies, which are not the end-all and be-all. Now, informational energetic fields create everything. That's what the universe starts with, and that's creates everything from there. We need to understand that. It's not coming from the electromagnetic, but informational energetic fields will produce electromagnetic fields if it's appropriate for that particular environment and so forth. So humans have decided to find the most common lower denominator. Of course, this is still relatively new. A lot of people were talking about, including all those great scientists who are claimed today, all believed in the ether and other energies that are similar to informational energetic fields. There was an energy out there, and it wasn't necessarily electromagnetic. So looking at electromagnetic only is kind of a bozo's kindergarten stupid way of doing things, otherwise known as the human race. So we understand all that, but it's getting us nowhere and never will get anywhere. We have no answers to anything because we're stuck in a science of stupidity, which is the only way we're able to generate things. I forget what I was seeing of a new energy generation system. And what it really came down to, which is, comical if you really think about it. The whole process, I forget what it was exactly. I watched so much stuff, it's hard to remember all of it. Is that it ended up heating water into steam. The steam then turned turbines to generate energy. So, of course, that's it. That's science. Science is everything. Burning. If you burn water, what happens to it? You become steam. So that's what it is. And, of course, here we go again. Chemotherapy is burning everything out. Yeah, that's science. Yeah, that's science. So the whole idea is that we have to understand that primitive way of thinking, that ignoramus realities. And of course, none of the documentation that we can get about advanced societies, extraterrestrials, etc., use any of this stupid technology. None of it is used. So it's just garbage technology that is only used by primitive, greedy, evil species of the earth. So getting a meter that is going to measure non-electromagnetic fields, well, you don't want to use anything electric, would you? Well, is that logic? Did I lose somebody? I lose somebody? Hey, Mr. Science Man over there, did I lose you? Huh? So the whole idea is we have to understand that in the bigger picture of what these fields are, what they do, etc., and the reality of that. So how do we measure? Now, it's important to measure these fields for many reasons. Now, we advise people against getting their own rates at this particular time, but we are going to have rate machines you can get your own rates with, or dial in rates, because there are millions of rates out there. Why let them sit there? Well, all you really need is that number anyway, and you can write it on a piece of paper and put it in any of the machines we offer, and you've got it. There's no difference there than dialing it yourself. So there are lots of rate books. We're going to get rate books to people. We're going to tell you where to get them, etc. in the future. We are going to be coming out with a dial machine so that you can get a book of rates and then dial it into machine in the old-fashioned way. But we are going to have old-fashioned radionic machines for those people who somehow think they're good. And we're going to have our very advanced new psychotronic wire-based machines as well. These are all coming out. I have a completely new wiring design that I'm putting together right now. So with that, we have to understand the fact of what's going on with the bigger picture. So you're not going to use an electromagnetic machine to basically measure non-electromagnetic fields. Now, some of these things, I guess you could say that, testing radiation is not electromagnetic. But I think probably radiation is electromagnetic. If we get down to it, I'm sure there's a frequency of that. And we're caught up in all these ignoramuses, bozo realities of life. And again, we're jumping over the real cause of everything to get into the effect of it. The effect is electromagnetism caused by informational energetic fields. So we're jumping over that because none of your local bozos that go to school for 20 years and make 300 grand a year can figure out how anything works. And they can? Really? Where are our problems being solved? Well, they're not being solved. So the fact that electrical engineers have figured out how to run crappy little computers and refrigerators and other things, well, yeah, these are kind of helpful. But that certainly I wouldn't call this advanced science. So the fact of processing information, moving information, etc., it's still at kindergarten stage. And again, computer technology has virtually not changed in 50 years. We're making things faster. It's not doing anything different. Well, we have to make it faster to carry larger programs that actually don't work too well. So we all have to understand the realities of all that stuff coming there. But the whole idea is, how does all this stuff work? So first of all, to think that we're going to make an electromagnetic meter runs on a battery to detect things just doesn't work. There's a few people who have come out with meters claiming that it senses this information. And basically, they're nothing more than capacitance meters. They're checking the flow of energy through something. And I've checked these. There's a couple of meters out there that are made like that, and they do absolutely nothing. So they do not really do anything. Checking capacitance means the flow of energy through something, how it moves energy. And this has a very minor effect on you. And getting a number doesn't tell you enough. So it's a complicated subject matter, which I will cover in my bigger course. But the bottom line is the reality of all this stuff is that you have to use very sensing. Now, what is the biggest sensing things that people like to put down? Of course, they like to say that it's a user problem. Well, isn't everything a user problem? So, when airplanes crash, pretty much 99% of the time it's pilot error. When things don't go right, it's all pilot error or boat error or whatever you want to call it error. It gets down to the human factor there that caused that problem. Probably. We don't know. We don't know what the further physical errors may have been there of mechanical type failures. We never know. If a plane blows up in the sky or you lose all your electricity and you're unable to bring the craft into a survivable position again, it's gone. Nobody knows. But the point is, everything is a user error. People make horrible software that is very difficult to use, but the egg-headed morons that are computer software people make all this garbage. So, and I guess they figure out how to use it. I frankly doubt they can use it well either. But it's pushed forward by industry, and that's part of the game of business, selling you garbage, making their money back from it so they can produce more garbage. So when we understand all these things, we have to then figure out, well, what is the most sensitive meter on the planet? What has millions or billions, maybe trillions of miles or capacities in them? Who has all these sensors, nerve endings, biological things that are affected by everything? Well, of course, the human species. Nothing has the greater capacity there. Now, the problem is that you basically put a moron in charge of a magnificent, sensitive machine that requires a lot of know-how, a lot of practice, etc. But we've decided to put Texans there. Yeah, howdy doody, where's my cowboy hat? So the whole idea is that this is the kind of reality that you run into, is that we've got a species of people who can't really figure out much of anything. So this runs into the reason why people discredit this and why people who are doing energy sensitive things tend to have problems because they haven't learned how to use their capacities properly. And of course, they're living in a comic book world of religion, a comic book belief of science, comic book teaching from their idiot teachers, their goofball parents, their stooge society that fills your head with garbage. Now, the problem is that that garbage in your head and your thinking and everything else influences what you get as a bioentity using all these trillions of miles of nerve endings, all these chemicals that are helping you good and bad ways. So when you try and do something, you become influenced by it. And as such, you're not getting the primitive meter picking up. Now, meters are not supposed to change what they do in terms of sensing, because it's a meter. You click it on, it doesn't have all those emotions. Nobody taught it anything. But yeah, well, it really did, though. Somebody taught the meter the circuit it's using. So it's been taught, it understands, and can only work through the circuit that it has. There's no such thing as working on its own, as much as computer bozos want to tell you differently. Just like there's no such thing as artificial intelligence. So the whole idea is that that's the problem. This is why people criticize things. But the amusing part of it all is that no matter what technology you use was invented by that same flawed, goofed up human being, that you're using a meter that they built. And the people even that built it, who are probably slaves, or maybe they were drugged out at that day, maybe they were having a bad day. Is that meter just like every other meter? Well, we just don't know a lot of this stuff. So there is a certain credibility to meters if they're working properly. As I said, I'd have to prove it to myself, because I don't believe anything anybody tells me about anything. So somebody tells me the sky is blue. Well, let me check it. And it's near impossible to check that. Maybe somebody's holding a blue screen over my window I'm looking out on. We never know, because we can't trust anything that is given us by input from a very evil, controlling society. So, but the bottom line is that one of the most underrated tools in any area of, quote, metaphysics and manifesting science is the use of pendulums. Pendulums are very critical to use. They're very important, and they are a necessity. If you cannot use pendulums correctly, then you will not be able to use manifesting technologies well. Now, you can still ballpark it, and you can put the energy there, and then you can kind of think or sense, well, is it on there long enough? Is it working right? These are all the things you check with a pendulum. And we'll get into this in our radionic training course as we get into how to test your force energy products, how to measure those fields, so we know what we're going. What I've got here, and I'm working on several different devices, which I'll be showing in the course. These are not the completed devices, but it'll give you kind of an idea of ways of using pendulums without the physicalness of you intervening with them. Now, one of the problems with pendulums, I've seen people do this, particularly a medical pendulum person, I forget what you call that, medical analyzing, and she used a pendulum. And I could see she was doing this. The minute it was moving, you never move your wrist or your fingers or everything else. You let the instrument do all the work. So if you see somebody doing this with the pendulum, oh, it's moving. No, it doesn't matter how fast it moves. Your hand never does this. So that's ridiculous. So this is one of the problems that I saw with people to get these kind of things. And I don't know if they were dramatizing what they were doing so they could show people better, but it's just bad pendulum work. So the whole idea is there are many types of pendulums, many different shapes, really unbelievable shapes out there, and of all different types that have all different types of energy. And of course, there's usually, everybody wants to use metal pendulums. And I'm moving away from this myself after getting more into that. If we're going to use a metal pendulum, then we're going to have a problem. Meaning all metal like this is not the best type of pendulum. This pendulum works pretty good at the energies that I've tested this with, using it with radionic machines, etc. But it may not be the best now that we, as usual, uncover things. But it's an excellent pendulum, and it works very well. But we have another one here, and there are many other ones. I'm not going to show them all in this particular video because it's too much to cover. Here's one that has a stone here, and it has the all-important, which I like, the all-important ball. I find that balls are very important. We're not picking up things necessarily from a tip, and that's the other thing. You think the energy is being picked up from the tip here and sucking it in. Well, you're not sucking anything in when you're analyzing something. Now, you can pick up energies and everything else through that, and that's very advanced pendulum work, and we'll talk about that in the course and in other videos. But what you're doing with something like this is sensing it, and you sense better when you have a round ball. So, and of course, if you're trying to pick up electromagnetic energies, getting a conductor of sorts, which is actually helped with electromagnetic fields, there may be a value to it. But basically what I found works the best is a plastic. Here's an old Kreskin from his kit, which he claims he designed to work well, the shape of it and everything else. I'm not sure what's going on there with the old Kreskin boy, but I do use his round pendulum that looks like this is plastic that I don't have right now. But this is a plastic one that came with his ESP game that came out in the late 60s. Something I highly recommend that you should look on eBay and try and get inexpensively because it's a fantastic psychic trainer. But I find that plastic like this tends to pick things up. Why? Because it's not metal. It's basically plastic is a non-conductor of electromagnetic energy. That's why wires are insulated with plastic. It's a non-conductor. But it is an accumulator because plastic is nothing more than carbon. So the whole idea is it is an accumulator of informational energetic fields, non-electromagnetic energies. So that's why it's so important, and the reason why I'm moving away from metal, even as I said, this is an excellent pendulum I've been using frequently for everything. The other thing is to get something that's more round, or at least a roundish structure. I mean, this is kind of a round. It's got a little point, but it's a big, big area to catch things. And I think that larger, light pendulums like this are good as well. So we're going to get all into this, and things are changing when you figure out how to do things. But the problem is that one of the things you want to use with pendulums is to use pendulum stands. Now I've got several things that will hold your pendulums here. And I'm going to be coming out with more. I may have a supply of these available for the public. I'm waiting on my other stand, which is a quite fascinating one. And we'll see how that goes. As usual, getting supplies and everything else is always difficult in this day and age. And making things is always a problem. So here we go again with one of these. Okay, so this is a stand. And what you do here, let's see on the camera, is you get your pendulum and you have grooves here where you actually can put the pendulum in. Now, I've tied a little knot here to hold this better in here so it doesn't slip. Now, you can put it in different areas, and these are designed. So you have a little notch at the top here to hold it. And then, of course, you want to put underneath here whatever it is you're testing. Now, what you do is you touch the pendulum here. Now, you can't really spin this very well. Unless you're really, and it's so obvious that you're trying to spin it when you do something like that. What you want to do is hold the pendulum, which is necessity, because your energy has to go through here. You're the conduit. I must understand that. Almost everything in life, you are a conduit. You are not a creator. You don't accumulate energy. Now, people tend to do this when they force it. Chi practitioners accumulate energy in their chakras and so forth. Well, yes, you can do that, but basically you're accumulating. You're still getting it from someone else. You're not manufacturing it. Chi is not manufactured within your body per se. You're drawing in chi. You get chi from food. You get chi from what you think about. You get chi from the sun. You get chi from Adam's apples or pomegranate, whatever it is. So you're an accumulator. People have to understand you accumulate, or you're basically a channel, a conduit. A conduit is where the energy comes into you. So this is the way that you do it. So this is very important for you to understand. So, and there are techniques. Now, years ago, I had devices like this brought to me by a person who was in this field for years, who worked with Hieronymus. And when I had my retail store, the only one on the planet for 3 years in Palm Springs, California, that actually was a radionic store, having radionic equipment, pendulums, etc. Everything. The only person ever to do that in the history of the planet. Another one of my many firsts. Of course, the reason why I'm the expert in this field on top of it. So when we have that, we all understand the reality of those things. So you still have to touch it. So this guy came to me and he showed me something that was very more similar like this. This is a new thing I just bought, which is kind of cool, but I'm not sure if they're available anywhere. I may make these available. I don't know. There's a lot of problems, again, getting products to people. But he had something pretty much just like this. Now, this is just you can get these anywhere, but of course you have to modify it, and I'm not showing you that right at this moment, but I'll give you a general description. This is something that is made to hold pendulums or jewelry. You hang it from here. There's little, these are relatively inexpensive. I forget what I paid for this, 15 euros. But you hang your pendulums in here. It goes in the top here. Let's see if I can get a picture of that. It just hooks in the top, very similar to the other thing, and you hang it here. And of course, that's a good way to keep your pendulums, because if you keep your pendulums on a desk like I have right now, they're going to get all tangled, and it's a nightmare when you got to use them. So having a pendulum stand like this is very advantageous to people, and you should have different types of pendulums. These are your medical tools, your surgery tools, your tools of high wisdom, your finest tools that you can get, which are pendulums. So you can hang them on here. This holds quite a few if you wanted to fill them up. I don't know if you need that many. But he had a device just like this, but he wrapped around the top here. He wrapped around the top here copper wires. Not wire. He wrapped it around there. I'm trying to remember how many he said actually was on there. I'm not sure that really matters. You know, if you wrap wire, though, you start to get a frequency, so they claim. I'm not sure it matters. But the whole idea is you want to wrap the copper wire around this, probably from here to here on this. So you have all this would then be copper wire. Now, that means that you're going to not be able to hang things on here too easily. But you want to make sure that you have left a space where you can have a pendulum holding. Of course, you wouldn't be able to then use this as a pendulum holder. You'd probably have to get 2 of these. But you would then connect your pendulum to it. And I like the fact that you have a capacity to put any pendulum you want there. So you'd have to leave this kind of area open as best you could and so forth. As I said, we'll get into that in the future. And then you would grab this with the pendulum in there and you'd put something underneath it. And this takes a little bit of practice. It's much harder to get results than it is with just holding the pendulum. But what this does for the skilled person who practices this is that you're no longer holding this. If you're no longer holding the top here, you can't play any of those games people say you are playing. Now, generally, all you've got to do when you use a pendulum is you hold it like this. In your right hand, energy comes from the left all the way through the right, no matter what your dominant hand is. And you just don't move it. As you see people doing this, there's a problem there. This should be spinning. Let me get it going. This should be spinning without you moving your hand whatsoever. Because it's the energy is going through your hand. It's the energy going through your hand that is causing the vibration here that moves it in the direction that you tell it to move. And it's all a very high consciousness thing here. That you tell it to move for yes or right, yes or no. Because it has to move in a direction that you understand it. And a lot of people go, oh, well, you know, they're talking about swinging this way or swinging that way. I don't like any of that personally. I think that's very bad pendulum work. But you'll see different things from everybody. That's the classic way. I don't do anything the classic way because I never think everything's done right. So clockwise, yes, good. Counterclockwise, no, bad. Back and forth, neutral. Most of the time, neutral means bad, but it means that there's not quite, the energy isn't quite there to give it a yes or a no. It's kind of in between. And of course, you do the same thing with this particular unit as well. This, if you hold it here, does it spin clockwise or counterclockwise? And I have to experiment with this to see how this will work or not, to see if this has to be wrapped with copper wire. Probably be good to wrap this with, let me get up there again, wrap this with copper wire in the back here. And then you would hold it in a fashion similar to this, with a finger on the copper wire and the finger on the pendulum itself. Move clockwise. Move clockwise. So, and of course, you can tell the pendulum how to move and so forth and see it happen. But this doesn't have the extra copper wire. It's hard to get the energy from this down into the pendulum unless you have that particular way to do it. Now, I'm not sure I'm going to be using copper wire either anymore, because again, that tends to be something that impedes the flow of this kind of energy. So what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be using fiber optic wire. So we're going to wrap this with fiber optic wire. We're going to wrap this one with fiber optic wire so that we do that instead of using the electromagnetic spectrum. And the problem with that is that this is not in that spectrum. So the results you get from those kind of, and it includes the fact of using metal as holding the pendulums and everything else. We're going to go into all that, and we're going to show you how to use pendulums that are connected through particularly fiber optic wire, and we're going to be using all these very advanced tools and going into it. But that was the old way that things were done. And of course, as I said, it gets back to using things like a plastic. This was in the Kruskin game. This is an actual Kruskin ESP training kit game. And I've said, I've been using plastic consistently now and getting much better results. And we're going to look into that of what we can do. It's, basically, everybody wants to make things out of stones and metal. So it's very difficult to find anything out of plastic because people think plastic is bad and non-conductive. Yes, it's non-conductive electromagnetics. And of course, that's what you want to screen out when you're tuning in things that are non-electromagnetic in nature, which is what radionic energies are. They're non-electromagnetic by, it must be 98%, 99% of the energy in radionics is non-electromagnetic. So a small percentage of it is. And of course, that's what you would want to do. And of course, let's see here, hanging this up like this. You can do this with anything. So that's what these kind of stands are designed for. I haven't tried this on there yet. And then, these are all the things you have to work at. You may have to somehow anchor it on here, do other things. All the chains are different. Try and get it to hold on there. So this is all part of engineering and design. And the whole idea is that, once you get involved in this kind of stuff, this is what a lot of money and time is spent on. Hours and hours of engineering of how to get this to hold in there, depending on the pendulum, etc. But as I said, we're not going to be using metal wires or anything else because it drags the conductivity down when you're talking about informational energetic fields. So you want to use plastic or a particular type of conducting energy, which is a particular type of wiring that we have that makes things work very well. And we're going to be offering these as pendulums, other things. All sorts of things will be coming out for that as well. But see, this takes the operator influence out of it. But a lot of people are not going to be able to do this. They're not going to be able to get the pendulum to swing because of the fact that the energy is a little bit difficult to get it that way. But we're hoping to use with our new actually psychotronic wire, as I call it. We're going to be able to move lots of energy into a pendulum and do that. Now, another way to do things is, of course, we've all seen these kind of things. These are, you generally have a stand underneath here. Do I have my stand somewhere? I'll leave that out there. So, oh, by the way, I just found this. Here's a plastic, and this is to put a sample inside of it. Plastic. when you're dowsing for something, in particular, like looking for silver, gold, oil. And look at this little puppy. It's got a string on it, which is completely non-conductive, electromagnetic conductive. And these are commonly used, or used to be. So having metal everywhere is not too great. So the other thing is that we have these. This is plastic right here, which again is good. I guess you could get these in plastic. This is for putting a pocket watch or something on. Usually there's a stand underneath it. What did I do with that? God, I've got so much stuff, it gets very confusing. Well, it's not in my research office, mister. So the whole idea, but it doesn't matter because you don't really want the stand on there anyway. But